You have just found and maybe even registered yourself for your first LARP. Excitedly, you see the confirmation email pop up in your inbox. But now what? Is there anything that you should prepare for the event? And what can you even expect at the LARP? How does this LARP thing even work? That is what we're going to talk about today. All sorts of practical tips to be well prepared for your first event. And the usual disclaimer, LARPs are completely different all over the world, so anything I say is generic and could work completely different for your LARP. So do double check the info. And let's just start chronologically. Usually the first thing to do after registering has to do with what you are going to play at the event. If you are going to play an NPC, you sometimes get the plot book earlier, and you can pre-select which characters you'd like to play. It's kind of the same if you're going to a LARP with pre-written characters. You sometimes get a few summaries of characters and you can decide which ones you want to play. Definitely keep in mind the deadlines on these. They can sometimes be months before the event. If you are going to a LARP where you can write your own character, start on time as well. If you send it to the organization on time, they can check it and they sometimes can give you extra hooks to play with. Some organizations even like to have a short call with you to really talk your character through and have it land well in the world. Then the practical side of event preparation. Aside from checking which items you will need and to make a packing list, it is also handy to read up on the LARP. So does that mean that you should put on your reading glasses and prepare for hours upon hours to study all the extensive lore that the LARP has provided? No, please, just don't. Unless you want to. If you are playing in a setting with magic, you don't need to know every single spell, especially if you aren't going to be playing a magic user. If you have a setting with lots of factions and groups, you don't need to know them all. Often it is enough to just read the parts that are relevant to you. Know what your own skills do. Know the general lore of your own race, group or faction. Quite a few of the LARPs that I go to have a summary sheet of the effects. You just need to broadly know what it does. So when someone yells a spell at you with a minute-long incantation but ends with the word strike, you know to fall backwards. One part of the rules I strongly suggest you read is the list of meta techniques. What are the signals you can make to tell or show other people things without breaking the immersion? An example of these that is often used here in the Netherlands is hand up is out of game. You can ignore that person, they are not there. They're not just invisible, no, they don't exist for the game. As an interesting tidbit, most Dutch LARPs use this as the invisibility sign. This also leads me to a part that I'd say is mandatory to read, the safety and consent rules. Know what ways you can communicate with other players about their safety and boundaries, and know what to do if you or any other player isn't okay with how things are going. This goes for both physical and mental rules. Physical rules for things such as fights, like no headshots or groin shots. But these are also rules like if you need to capture someone, do not physically tie their hands, but have them hold the rope in their hands. Then people who see that know the person is bound. But if it is needed, such as an emergency or an uncomfortable position, the person isn't physically stuck. And LARP can be mentally taxing. Not everyone enjoys having people shout at them or very intense emotional play. And I'm glad to see more and more LARPs are implementing check-in systems. For example, we are having a very heated shouting discussion, and the other player sees me react to this quite heavily. Some LARPs use a verbal traffic light system, where the other player just asks, "Green?" To which I can reply green if everything is okay with me and the player can continue shouting at me all they like. Or I can reply with yellow if it is still okay but they shouldn't move any closer. It is okay like this, but don't make it any more intense, please. Or I can reply red, in which case the scene stops and necessary follow-up is given. Again, this is just one example. There are many systems like it with subtle differences, so read up on how your LARP uses it. Some also use hand symbols instead of words. So yes, for this is it very important everyone knows the system your LARP uses and actually uses it in the same way, so do read up on this. Oftentimes, LARP events take place in slightly more remote locations, or public transport's just crap where you are from. If you do not have a car, do not hesitate to go to whatever online place your LARP has, like a Discord or a Facebook group, and ask for a ride. It might seem scary, but in general we are all very enthusiastic people, And driving along with someone who has already played before, or even with others who are completely new, can help a lot with the pre-hype. And you might get to know some faces already. When you arrive at the LARP, usually you need to check in. They can point you to wherever your sleeping spot is or where you can pitch your tent. Sometimes they need a signature for insurance, or they want you to write down a phone number of an emergency contact. Usually you have some time between arriving and time in, so I suggest you set up your sleeping spot now. It's no fun wanting to go to bed at 2 AM and still having to make your bed. Plus, you aren't missing any in-game action if you do this before it all starts. You can also decide to immediately put on your outfit, but that would depend on how much time you have exactly. Some games also organize new player workshops or safe fighting workshops before the game start. So do check the website or ask your LARP if they provide these, as they give you very hands-on info as well. Then for the game start. Usually all the attendants gather for an introductory talk. Organizers will go over some last practical things, point out the first aid people, confidence, often reiterate the consent rules and tell the times the game will run for. They will then continue with some in-game info, for example, what has happened in the downtime between the events, if there was any. After this, the players go to what was pointed out to be the starting location, or they have a soft time-in. This last one means the players can go wherever. The time-in isn't necessarily cold, but people can just start doing their thing and the plot will start running after a while. You often see this in LARPs that have a fixed in-game location. If you are a new player, you will often be taken apart so you can enter the game as a new character. Either to physically enter the location differently from the other players, but I also know a LARP where it can mean you will suddenly be dropped in the middle of the group of players. Enjoy the chaos that ensues. A question I often get is, are you in character the entire event? The answer to that is no. It's just nearly impossible to be fully in character an entire weekend. Most LARPs won't run during the night, and bedrooms and areas like sanitary places will often be out of game as well. Aside from that, you can sometimes just have conversations where, if people don't mind, it steers away from in-game talk and turns into out-of-game talk. This happens especially often during moments such as breakfast or dinner time. And if the game is high intensity, they might also provide dedicated out-of-game rooms, where if needed, you can sit down and unwind a bit. Maybe you are overstimulated and need a moment to take a breather. This is completely fine. Either go to the dedicated room, your sleeping spot, or take a walk in the forest on the terrain. Which leads me to another important point. No matter how cool the plot, game or intense the scene is, your own well-being goes first. If scenes become too much, don't hesitate to use the safety mechanics to opt out or walk away. If you need to stand for long periods of time for a speech of ceremony and it becomes too much, just sit down. In case someone comments on it, make the relevant sign or say that it is an out-of-game necessity and they should accept it, even if in-game it would have been inappropriate for your character or the scene. Aside from that, we are all going to be enthusiastic, we are all going to forget the time, but also think of your needs. Don't forget to drink, don't forget to eat. You will burn a lot more than you might be used to, especially if the weather is extra hot or cold. Try to carry a water container on you at all times, or find something to remind you to drink enough. I personally have the rule that I top up my water bottle every time I go to the toilet and I grab a snack every time I walk past a bar at an event that has food included. And I must say, sometimes just sitting down and enjoying everything that's happening around you can be a good activity as well. You can wind down a bit, enjoy the atmosphere of the LARP, and who knows, maybe you might overhear some interesting info that you can use later in the game. And then the in-game hours have passed and someone will yell, "Time out!" This signals the end of the game. People finish the last bits of the scene they are playing and they gather, just like with the time-in talk. Considering everyone is probably rather tired, the outro talk is often relatively short and can address practical matters like how the cleanup will happen, the dates for the next event and when the sign-ups will open for it. Aside from that, it is often also includes a round of thanks to pretty much everyone there, as LARP is still a collective hobby and we are all in this together. After the timeout talk, it is time to clean up. People collect their own stuff and sweep or otherwise clean the communal areas. And with some "that was awesome" chatting with the other players and a round of goodbye hugs, it is time to go home. But in a way, that's not the end of an event. Let me introduce you to a thing called the LARP dip. It might be familiar to people who have been to other awesome events like cons or festivals before. The day or a week after the LARP, you can feel sad, tired and a bit down. You might miss the people and the positive vibes, and definitely have some sleep to catch up on. Let me just say, this is normal. You just went through a lot, physically and mentally, and it will take a bit to catch back up. But there are ways to make this better. Again, join the community of the LARP and share all your awesome stories, thank fellow players, and collectively wait for the photos to go online. And side note, do give the photographer some time. The pictures will come when they will come. Often a week or a few weeks after a LARP, the organizers will send out an evaluation form to see if they can make the next event even better. And with that, the event is closed. Until the next event and we start this entire circus all over again. If you have any other questions about the practicalities or getting started in LARP, don't hesitate to ask them in the comments. If you'd like to see more getting started in LARP videos, you might want to subscribe. And I hope you enjoyed this video and that it was informative. And with that, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.